Welcome to Lesson 1C. Today's lesson is titled Instant Runoff. Make sure you have your student in-class page and something with which to write, highlighters, a glossary page. We're going to have several words that you're going to need to write down today, maybe even some flashcards that you're starting to memorize or to write on to memorize. But for right now, I'd like you to read through the first paragraph that talks about elections are held every day. And then when you finish reading that one, do question 1. And then when you finish answering that, come back to the recording. On question 1, your answers can vary based on your experiences and your beliefs, and that's part of what we'll be looking at in this lesson. Do note on the objectives, and you might want to underline some of these, like on the first one, the earning the most votes may not be sufficient to win an election. On the second bullet, multiple considerations and methods for ranking candidates are something we're going to look at. On the third bullet, multiple ranking methods can be employed to make decisions about other issues. Fourth bullet, I would underline plurality and majority to get those words rolling around in your mind. We'll also, in this lesson, create a first-degree equation. We're going to talk about percentages, and we're going to solve for variables. Those are some things you might want to consider underlining. The next to the last bullet, we're going to do a concept called instant runoff. And that is something you'll need to know what it means and how to find that. Again, we're getting ready with our concepts building up to the first test. And finally, what we're going to learn in this lesson are how to apply and justify selection strategies. What are you going to use in your election? Let's continue reading down the page. On your notebook paper or on a glossary, whatever you've decided to start for definitions, this paragraph is very full of information. And so here it says a candidate or a proposal is going to receive more than half the votes in an election. And if this happens, it's said that they have won a majority or what's called an absolute majority. I would write those down, flag them. Those are words you're going to need to know, to memorize. And then it mentions that if there's an election with more than 2 candidates, the candidate who receives the largest number of votes, but not necessarily more than half, is said to have received a plurality. And sometimes that's called a relative majority. Again, put these pieces of information somewhere where you'll be able to come back and study them for the test and also use them in your homework. There are several ways to determine a winner in situations where no candidate received a majority. This activity and the next will provide us some examples. Now I want us to look at questions 2 and 3. If we were in class face-to-face, I would ask you to do these first and then come back to the video to talk about them. So I need you to go ahead and cut off the video and then come back and let's talk about questions 2 and 3. So on question 2, it is talking about an election and looking at the results, who do you think should have won? And many students and many people at this point would say David Dewhurst. And a rationale is because he received the highest number or highest percentage of votes. But then number 3 says in Texas, it has to be a majority election. So who's the winner of this election? No one. We get to go to a runoff. Moving on to question 4, this is especially a question you need to attempt and get an answer for this question before watching the demonstration. Looking at question 4, the number of votes received by Cruz and Dewhurst in this runoff election would be, looking at the number of votes received by Cruz and Dewhurst, they're listed below. Part A, the question is, how many total votes were cast in the election? This is an answer many students will get incorrect, but most of the time everyone does start by saying, well, if there were 447,428 who voted for Cruz, and then 621,850 who voted for Dewhurst, when you add these numbers together, many students will say 1,099,278 are the total number of votes cast. But in actuality, that would only represent 79% of the votes. More votes went somewhere else. It's not representing a full 100% of the votes cast. So Part A says how many total votes were cast. So 79% is represented by 1,099,278. We'll need to calculate how many total votes were cast. We'll have to do some algebra to calculate this amount. So I've changed pen color, and I'm going to write down that 79% of the total amount of votes cast is equal to our 1,099,278 voters, the ones who voted for Cruz and for Dewhurst. In this class, you're supposed to have a scientific calculator, not a graphing calculator or a cell phone, and not a for function. So using your scientific calculator, first set up this equation, and then we're going to divide both sides by the 79%. And one great thing about it being a recording is you can start and stop the recording as many times as you want. And also, if you notice things that you think are wrong, inaccurate, an error, or mistake, please email me. You can take a screenshot. Please keep that communication going because I want to make sure that I'm relaying accurate information. So these become 1, and so our x is going to be the result of 1,099,279 divided by 79 hundredths. So the number that I get is this, 1,391,492.41 or 41 hundredths. Remember, we're talking about humans. And so with us talking about humans, we're going to practice good rounding, but we'll also practice good reasoning and thinking. So it does make sense that we could go ahead and say that the total amount of votes cast in the election were 1,391,492, and we always need to have a good unit there, votes. That's how we calculate Part A, but it continues by saying how many votes would be needed to win the majority or a majority. Majority, if you look back in your notes, or just remember, it means more than half. And so whatever half is, we need to be more than it. And we could be more than it like a decimal value. But since we're talking about people, it's going to be one full number more than half. So we're going to take the number that we just got and divide it by 2. And it's going to be about worth a number. So you go ahead and calculate that. I'm going to hit pause, erase my screen, and I'll be back and we'll talk about what is that 1,391,492 divided by 2 going to look at or look like. I'm back to keep working on question 4, and ironically, I mentioned mistakes, and as I was erasing, I noticed I had a mistake in that last calculation. What I did for part A was incorrect because instead of using this 8, I used a 9. So I'm going to come way over here in this corner, and we're going to do this one more time. 79% of the whole total amount of votes cast is this 1,099,278. We're going to divide both parts by 79 hundredths, and we're going to get that our x is approximately equal to, when I take calculator and divide 1,099,278 and divide it by 0.79, I get an answer of 1,391,491 and 14 hundredths, which is the correct number. And I'm just going to use this front part and call it voters. And now, if that is the total amount of voters, looking down here at part B, then how many votes are going to be needed to win a majority? A majority is when you have the number of voters and it's half of that. But remember, it's got to be just a little bit more than half, just over half. So we're going to divide this by 2. And when I divide that number by 2, I'm getting 695,000 740, well, 45.5. 695,745.5. And if we're talking about to win a majority of an election, it can't be exactly half. It's got to be just over half. And so a quick way to check this is if I add my 745, add it to itself, 695,745, I come up with a number that is not where I started. I come up with 1,391,490. So it cannot be that half, or to win would be 695,745. It's got to be plus 1. So the final answer that we're looking for on part B, how many votes would be needed to win a majority election? Let me grab a different color and say that to win this election, someone's going to need 1,391,491 votes to have a majority. To continue, it is best if you answer number 5, question 5, before you watch this video. So I suggest you hit pause, answer question 5, and then come back to hear an explanation. On question number 5, it says, since no candidate received a majority in this original election, then it requires a runoff. Below are the results of the runoff election. The runoff is also a majority election. So who won the runoff election? And right here, you'll notice that Ted Cruz received 57% of the votes. So he received more than 50%. That's how and that's who won that election. Add this next piece to your glossary or flashcards or sticky note collection, but it talks about another election method is called the instant runoff or elimination. And that's a key word for me to help me remember what instant runoff means. And it's to ask the voters to rank the candidates in order of preference. And here's a scenario. You got 3 candidates, A, B, and C, Alex, Blake, and Charlie. They applied for a position. The interviewing committee ranked their choices, and the completed ballot from just one committee member is shown. That's the order of, or how they ranked their preference of the candidates. Going on with question 6, you really should look at question 6 in full before watching this explanation. So I would pause, go to question 6, and then come back. Question 6 says, once all of the ballots are collected, here are the results compiled in the preference schedule. And notice that 3 people ranked Alex in first and Blake in second, etc. But there are some questions that it would be really good for you to draw on the information to help you answer these questions. How many voters were on the interviewing committee? And you need to make it really clear to your eyeballs that we had 3 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 are 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We had 9 votes on our voters on this committee. Oops, doesn't go there. 9. A majority is still needed to win in this scenario, so how many votes are needed? Majority is half. If this is 4.5, we won't have 4.5 people voting. We'll have to go ahead and say 5 is majority, 4 is not, and just keep in mind that 5 plus 4 is still the 9 that we need. Again, you should have looked at question 6 in its entirety. I'm going to help with C, D, and E. I'm going to keep it on this screen and use our chart. Part C says how many first place votes did each candidate receive? And so right here, you've got to be very careful that you see that Alex just got 3, Alex got 1, and then we'll go look at Blake and Charlie. So Alex got 4 first place votes. Blake, here are Blake's first place votes. He got 3, and Charlie got 2. Part C also says, do we have a winner? And remembering that 5 is the majority, we have no one with 5, so we do not have a clear winner using majority. Part D says which candidate received the fewest, and this is very critical that you write that in your notes when you're documenting information about this instant runoff method. We are now looking at the process on Part D. Whoever receives the fewest, and that's what I would make note in my glossary or flashcards, that's what we're going to look at as the fewest first place votes. And to employ the instant runoff, we're going to mark out or eliminate that person's name in each column. Well, since Charlie got the fewest first place votes, we're going to go through and remove Charlie. And I would be marking up your piece of paper. We're going to go through and remove Charlie because he was the bottom of the list. And then Part D continues by saying any name below that one in the table will now move up. In other words, Blake would move up to here, Alex would move up to here, but what we're really looking at is that Blake moves up to this first place. So Alex still has 1, 2, 3, 4. Alex still has 4 first place votes. But now Blake has 1, 2, 3, and he just got those. So Blake now has 5. With Charlie's votes gone, we now have a clear winner. Looking at part E, how many first place votes do we now award to the 2 remaining candidates? Well, you see Alex with 4 and Blake with 5. Who wins the election? Blake wins the election. We end this lesson with questions 6 and 7. Asking the method shown in question 5 that it is known as the instant runoff, and what are some pros and cons? This is your opinion. What do you think is good about instant runoff method, and what do you not like or think are some disadvantages of the instant runoff method? And number 8 asks, can you think of another election for choosing some way to choosing the winning candidate in an election? And then what are pros and cons of your method? Can the process guarantee that the choice made or winner in an election is correct and fair to all candidates? And you can think nationally, you can think locally, paper, rock, scissors. You can think all sorts of things, but do spend some time on parts or questions 7 and 8, finishing up lesson C. Do look at your syllabus and the calendar to find out if this is the last lesson for this week or if you need to watch more videos.